have with us Mr. Anish Mandal, partner Deloitte. In fact, they say that to get the right answers, one needs to ask the right questions. So we are in the right hands of Mr. Mandal, who will be spearheading this session. I'd like to first please invite Mr. Anish on stage, and let me also go ahead and invite all our speakers as well. Hi, Anish. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me go ahead and invite our speakers. We have with us Amit Mohan, President Logistics Infrastructure Finance, Kotak Mahindra Bank. I'd like to please invite all our speakers on stage. We have with us BC Tripathi, Vice Chairman, Essar Exploration and Production, and Board Member, Essar Green Mobility. We also have with us Natasha Chopra, Director Supply Chain, Mondelez, India. Munish Sharma, Lead ESG, BSES Rajdhani Power. Soham Joshi, Lead Warehousing, Nestle. Mangal Dev, Head, Hitachi Rail India and South Asia Mobility, and Director, Hitachi India. So if I could please invite all our speakers on stage. And meanwhile, all the ones who are seated behind, please move forward. Let's have you all move forward so that we can make the session interactive. Let's actually do that. For all the ones who are seated behind, if you can please move forward. I know we're inching closer and closer towards the end. We'll have all our colleagues also join in from the other halls. But meanwhile, if I could request those who are behind, please move forward. And first up, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I know that currently there's a limited audience, but can we have an unlimited round of applause so we can get the energy back in the air and get the rest of the members back inside the hall? With that, Anish, over to you.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining us in, and thanks to the esteemed panelists for joining me in the session as well. So it's an interesting session, right, from transitioning from a global economy to what's happening inside, especially in the view of a net zero economy, which is say we have planned for 2070, but we have big plans for 2030 as well. So we're going to hear from the panel that what are the different interventions or initiatives taken by each of these corporates in integrating rather ESG or more from a green mobility perspective, or inducting green mobility in their fleet, more from the logistics sector, or otherwise as well, more from a financial services sector as well. What has been the challenges, trends in financing, say for example ESG, right? So that's the briefly the panel expectations, what we're going to hear from this particular quorum. Now, just to give you a little bit of a background, so almost 12 to 14% of emissions, or India's emissions, is from the transport sector, including the logistics. And where we are right now is usually, if you see the logistics sector or the transport sector has an elasticity of 1.3 to 1.4 with GDP. So if you're planning to grow at 6-7% or 7-8% for the next 20 years, so similar kind of 1.5 times growth is also expected in the logistics sector, and that's going to create a similar kind of or explode the emissions right there, right? So if you don't capture that, or if you don't transition to the green mobility aspects of it, right? So that's something which the corporate sector, India Incorporation, has rightly recognized and taken a number of initiatives. We have already reached a sales penetration of 8%. Of course, a lot of it is into the two-wheelers, but if you've seen the logistics sector kind of exploding, especially the quick commerce and as well as the other bit of things, we have seen at least in the last 1 year a lot of progress, right? As Tata Motors rightly says that they have inducted 10 new customers every quarter, and now there are already 70 customers who are taking Tata S models and other things. Amazon has inducted 1,000 or 10,000 e-SCVs, what we call it, the small commercial vehicles. Rightly so, even the Flipkart has already inducted some kind of a 10,000 vehicles. Deliveries of the world, all of them are now going for that. So I think with that background, we're going to hear more from the perspective of OEMs, and as well as what are the initiatives been taken by, say, for example, Essar's venture, and as well as corporates like Mondelez, Nestle's of the world, and more from, we're going to hear from Kotak Mahindra Bank as well. that what are the different trends in the financial services sector. So with that, if I can just request a huge round of applause for our panelists, and then we begin with the questions. Thank you again. So probably I'll start with Soham, and I'll move kind of round the clock in that sense. So Soham, I think you come from Nestle, and that's probably every day there is a lot of demand, more from the perspective of your goods traveling from one warehouse to other, or so the retailers or the wholesalers and other things, right? So what are the unique challenges does the FMCG industry face in implementing sustainable supply chain practices? And how is Nestle approaching these? So if you can just throw some light on that.
Okay. So thanks for that question. So I would answer that by just giving a gist of what FMCG supply chain looks like. So any typical FMCG supply chain would have various aspects of procurement, which would involve the packaging part, the manufacturing, and then the downstream logistics part. So the role of sustainability would come in every aspect of the supply chain. In packaging, it would be moving towards sustainable packaging. In manufacturing, again, it will be in different areas of usage of alternate sources of power like wind, solar, in the manufacturing processes, and also trying to get towards carbon positive or water positive. How do we try and achieve that? And then there is a huge potential in the logistics sector, which is the downstream logistics part. What differentiates FMCG from some of the other industries, I would say, is more on the velocity part, because the kind of movements that FMCG businesses see in terms of movement of goods is typically higher as compared to any other industry. And the network which FMCG would use would typically be of having around 30 to 40 warehouses within the country, which would typically have product sourcing from factories. So factories to the warehouses, which would be 30 to 40, which we would call primary logistics. And secondary logistics, which would mean supply from my 30 to 40 distribution centers to around 1,000 plus distributors within the country. So again, there are two legs to this: primary logistics and secondary logistics. There are different unique challenges in both of them. So with the advent of a lot of alternate fuel vehicles coming in, like CNG, LNG, electric vehicles, the penetration has really happened to quite a good extent in the secondary logistics part, wherein the distances are typically lower. So there is a challenge currently in terms of infra availability, because we have more vehicles available in the industry which are of lower payload, and because of the lack of charging infrastructure or supporting infrastructure, we do not have a lot of support on the road which would enable vehicles to travel larger distances. So which is why secondary logistics, which involves distances of around 150, 200 kilometers, we have a good penetration of alternate fuel vehicles like electric, LNG, CNG. One challenge which remains is how do we increase the levels of alternate fuel vehicles in the primary logistics lane, which would typically involve distances of around 800 to 1,000 kilometers. So there is still a way to go in that, although almost all the big corporates, including us, have started good penetration in both secondary and primary lanes. So we have partnered with a lot of big transport service providers to get LNG vehicles or bigger capability vehicles, bigger payload vehicles, in order to improve the penetration in the primary transportation lane. Another area is also that of rail transportation. So again, there are challenges in terms of cost, in terms of rail usage, but a lot of FMCGs are using that also in terms of transportation from majorly north and west to the eastern part of the country.
Awesome. It's a pretty comprehensive answer. And I think thanks for pointing out. So, of course, there are challenges in the long haul vehicles, and probably an alternative would be LNG going first, and then probably the EVs till the time EV matures. I think that's well taken. But just a quick follow-up questions amongst the overall fleet of what you have or what you use from your vendors as well. What's the typical percentage of alternate fuel vehicles as a percentage you've already achieved, and whether you have a target to achieve certain by 2030, if that
yeah, so target is obviously to maximize the alternate fuel usage, but then it is also constrained by the supply in both the primary and secondary leg. So typically in the FMCG industry, I would say in the secondary transportation lane, the materials which are moved through alternate energy vehicles would be close to around 15%, with a target to go to about 25-30% in the next 3 years.
Okay.
Whereas in the primary, it would be lower. It would be around 8 to 9% as of now. And we have targets of going up to 20-25% in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think Shivam pointed out that railways is of course an alternative and the cost is something which is probably pinching them. So question to Mr. Dev. So I think, okay, so right, thanks for pointing it out. So Mr. Dev, I think what role do you see technology playing in enhancing both sustainability and efficiency in the mobility industry, particularly looking at your experience in railways and its maintenance? Of course, we know that it's 100% it's already electrified, but at the end of it, I think more from the perspective of technology interventions and as well as innovations, are there role where we can have more and more of efficiency and therefore probably costs coming down? If you can throw some light.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So, Hitachi plays a very significant role in the sector of energy as well as mobility. And we combine that together, we call this operational technologies with the digital technologies. And therefore, we bring a multifold kind of efficiencies for our customers like operators. To give you some example, just to set the stage right. So Indian Railways has an existing network which carries both passenger and freight. And freight is given least priority and passenger gets the most priority. But still, we are helping to decongest, increase velocity and capacity on their network. For example, we commission a project between Ghaziabad to Kanpur where we interlinked all these stations using electronic interlocking technology, which helps to control more than 1,000 routes at one station. It can go as high as 1,000 stations at one routes and one station. And when you electronically automate these routes, which means you can have large number of long trains to carry not only passenger but also help freight trains to carry the freight along this network and decongest. So this is one example. And then digitally, we connect all these stations, the station masters and the stations with a centralized traffic control, which can oversee the entire operation digitally and see the status of the train, status of the network, and how to improve efficiency while maintaining the safety on the railway network. You have to also note that railway takes the minimum land space, to carry the largest amount of freight compared to a road transport or compared to any other transport. And that meant that, Indian Railway should invest into a dedicated freight corridor. So we are also a technology partner with the Indian Railways Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation to build a brand new freight corridor between Dadri, Rewari to Makarpura to JNPT. So up to Makarpura, it is already operational. So which uses the capacity increasing, the electronic interlocking and number of other systems, train management system, which helps to achieve an efficiency, very high efficiency and very high speed operation on the railway network with the very highest level of safety. So these technologies, and then we combine with other digital technologies, which again help operator to run the trains in time. So this is the first time that railway can operate, and perhaps anybody who wants to, carry logistics on trains, this could be one such change that we have brought in together with DFC on Indian Railways. Now the trains will be timetable. This is the first time freight trains will be timetable, and you can know. And this is with the least energy consumption because we are making sure that large number of trains and highly efficient double container load is being carried rather than just single container. And Indian Railways generally have a train size of 750 meters, but this one will be double of that, 1.5 kilometers. So you can imagine that the speed is going up, the load is going up, and you are carrying much more longer trains on the same network. So we are bringing in these kind of technologies which are by design are clean, sustainable, and long term. So railway, once you install a railway, it can go up to a life of more than 100 years. So you don't have to, if you maintain it properly, do the operation and maintenance, in a kind of defined manner, you can run the railways for over 100 years. So this is one such example. And then, of course, we are also making sure that the energy that is drawn, whether renewable or thermal energy, because Hitachi's energy business is also helping railways to have very efficient products like transformers or substations, and the conditioning of the energy and the automation with which the energy is being used by railways. As you said, railways have already achieved 100% target of electrification. The next is to improve efficiencies both in terms of energy consumption as well as in capacity, and keeping mind in the safety. So there are multiple technologies, in this area, and digitization, in addition to this, plays a very important role, where we can make sure that you can use different algorithms of AI ML to understand, how the different operators manage their fleet, whether fleet is of trains, fleet is of the commercial vehicles, or different kind of vehicles that are there, and including now we are moving towards battery trains or battery vehicles. So energy management and charging management and the fleet management is something that we very widely do elsewhere and also in India. So we bring in those digital solutions also. So these are some of the technology that we bring in together, mobility, energy, and digital, to make sure that we build a sustainable India and India for the future.
Thank you so much for that. Very well covered, Mr. Dev. Just for the audience, we were fortunate to do the net zero modeling for Government of India as well. And the two levers which were pointed out, one was, of course, the energy efficiency, which is because of technology interventions. That's going to be most critical in terms of transforming India. And the second was multimodal transport, which Mr. Dev also talked about, the DFCs of the world, or double freight corridors and other things. So that's something which is definitely going to be most critical. I'm going to pose a question to Munish now. So Munish, you come from BRPL or BSES Rajdhani Power Limited, and you run a utility company in Delhi. Now, of course, the EV transition or the mobility transition, which we are talking about, offers a significant opportunity for BSES particular, or the utilities, in laying down charging infrastations in the license area, right? Now, what are the plans for BSES on leveraging this transition? Globally, I think almost 30-40% of all the charging stations are owned by utilities. And there is a reason for it, of course. You can supply, and as well as you can extend the last mile connections as well. So is there any plans around it for BSES as well?
Thank you, Anish. Yeah, such an apt topic at this moment when we are heading towards a situation when we need to plan for not the years together, we need to plan for the decades together, keeping sustainability at the backdrop. So for BSES, which is the power distribution utility at Delhi, we supply about 70% of power in Delhi. Right now, the area which we are sitting is being supplied by BSES Rajdhani. Mobility has always come up as a very huge parallel vertical to BSES in a couple of years. And the EV breakdown in Delhi has certainly made a pave path for BSES also to venture into that. So far, we are leading in terms of providing the infrastructure for chargers in Delhi, which is to the tune of about 4,000 odd chargers, which are all available across the license area of BSES Rajdhani and Yamuna. We have 2 licenses in Delhi. But certainly, yes, this is going to have a huge boost in the days to come. Let me share some national numbers with you, because we are sitting right now in a city, that too in part of a city, where these numbers are countable. But when I come to a national projection, we require somewhere about 1.32 million charging points all across India if we need to support the decarbonization agenda for India. And when it comes to the logistics, certainly these numbers would certainly go up, because these are the numbers for the radial highways and the associated periphery roads of the towns and the major cities. But these numbers would be going up to the tune of another 1 million if we actually have to see that. And right now, if we go by that asking pace, we need to be installing at least about 4 lakh to 5 lakh chargers per year, at least, in the major townships across India, so that we reach that number. So that's the level of universe, I can say. So with this background of the asking rate in hand, certainly yes, companies like utilities like BSES and other utilities, leading utilities across various states, which have been foraying into the EV charging infrastructure. It's a huge amount of task in front of them. Certain things which we would just like to, I'll just encapsulate in my talk here in a couple of minutes, that how this would help not only making this entire corridor green or the ecosystem green, how that would actually help the economy also, would be that whenever we see something of this kind of a green thing happening across, it is the first thing which comes up is the cost. So regulations, cross-border regulations in terms of our own states, they have to be unified, point number one, to make it happen. In Delhi, we have a plan. We are at 4,000 charging points. We have a plan to make it up to 10,000 charging points. For BSES, we have converted almost 60% of our fleet to electric as of now. We'll be converting another 40% and taking all our procurement on electric vehicles from henceforth. Same do hold for other power utilities in Delhi also and other states also. So if we move in such a progressive manner, then only we'll be able to, I think, reach that target of net zero by 2030, which is the aspirational target as of now for us as a utility provider. But once we feel that we are also supplying power, not only power, we are actually directly engaging with the economy in terms of galvanizing it to reach that level. So that's the kind of activity which is there. Second utmost thing which I would just like to capture here is that since power distribution or consuming power, as in one of the sessions in the morning, I just said that power, AI is another power. In the days to come, we have to actually collaborate AI across all levels of our operations, logistics, strategy. For corporates and even for the citizens, we need to have a very clear cut mandate how AI is infused into our day-to-day operations. So similarly, for such kind of green initiatives, we always feel that collaboration from the stakeholders around in the ecosystem is a matter of concern. We need the state governments, we need the central governments, we need the regulators, we need the ecosystem service providers, we need the startups, we need the energy service providers like us and many others to come forward collaboratively, keep their interest stake, and then move forward holistically towards this goal. Because at the end of the day, it's just not about making sustainability as an imperative to our business strategies. It is just about making things happen and seeing it happen in our lifetimes. So this is where I would leave. And
Thank you, Manish. So I think it was good to know your plans. So next question to Natasha. So Natasha, I think the way you will answer that will determine how many chocolates or how many Cadbury's they will buy. How is Mondelez India working towards reducing carbon footprints of its supply chain, particularly in the context of initiatives taken in green mobility and reducing your emissions while producing some of the best products of the country?
So thank you, Anish. Mondelez overall globally, we've aimed at zero carbon emission by 2050. And we have a very strong goal of reducing carbon emissions by 30% by 2027. And again, 50% by 2030. So we look at carbon emissions, specifically talking about logistics. The first thing that we do as an organization very strongly and very seriously is logistics optimization. What I mean by that is my route optimization, distribution network planning. Can we reduce our number of kilometers traveled anyhow? In addition to that, we also look at container utilization, our vehicle fill rates for primary transportation and secondary transportation. These initiatives may look small from the looks of it, but when you actually execute them, they deliver a lot of profitability, not only by cost, but also they are sustainable practices. In addition to that, whatever Soham mentioned initially, using alternate fuels, we have a good percentage of EV vehicles in our secondary transportation leg. We also are starting up with LNG in our primary transportation leg. Then we also use multimodal. We use the coastal route a lot. And then we partner with Indian Railways for transport of our products, specifically from north to east. So we initially started with ambient, but because the nature of the product is almost half of the revenue that we get is from chocolates. So we've partnered with Indian Railways for cold chain compliant transportation as well. So these are some of the initiatives that we do. In addition to that, I would also like to call on PM Gati Shakti Yojana. So we collaborate very well with our other FMCG players in the industry for backhaul transport. So which also means that we are not just getting the truck empty back. We are utilizing, we are collaborating. That's not only cost efficient, it's also sustainable in nature. So there's a strong collaborative network between cross FMCG organizations to do backhaul transportation.
Wonderful. Good to know. And Shubham, I think you mentioned 15-20%. She mentioned 50% by 2027. So some competition for you.
I think more than that, I need to revise the targets back home for the bank.
I think a lot of competition, Sohan.
Right. So now a question, I think, Mr. Tripathi, to you. So, because I think you have held numerous leadership positions and now with Essar. So how are you seeing Essar Green Mobility contributing to the development of overall green mobility infrastructure in India? If you can just highlight on that.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all my fellow panelists and the guests in the room. Well, to support our economic growth, we need a very smart, intelligent, and sustainable logistics system. That's a very well accepted fact. If you look at the freight basket, is almost 70% is through the trucking sector in the country, which is basically the guzzler of diesel. And this sector is today almost 4 million heavy trucks are operating on the road, which is growing at a rate of almost 7%. So it's going to be almost 8 million trucks on the road in next 5 to 7 years' time. And this is one segment of the transport, which is the heavy emitter of carbon dioxide, which contributes almost 12% of the CO2 emission we have in our economy today. And we are exactly trying to find a solution to address these aspects. And that's why Essar Green Mobility is trying to put a complete ecosystem around this, where we are focusing on all segments. One is the manufacturing of heavy-duty LNG-driven vehicles and the electric vehicles, trucks of capacity of more than 50 tons for long haul. The second, we are trying to focus and create an infrastructure to provide fuel, LNG, and the power. And the third one is sourcing the fuel, that is LNG and power itself. And the fourth one is owning and operating the large fleet. So along the whole value chain, this whole green mobility business Essar has been launched. We are making LNG-driven trucks, which are almost 50 tons of capacity. In one tank, you can transport upwards up to 1,200 to 1,300 kilometers. We are launching a new product where with the 2 tanks, you can go as long as 2,500 kilometers in one fill and carrying a load of almost 50 tons. Another 2 months from now, we are going to launch the electric truck, and which is also going to be of capacity of 50 tons and above. So this is where the whole green mobility is being structured. And in this, the carbon dioxide emission will be reduced by 30% as compared to diesel. The SOx and NOx are almost zero. In terms of efficiency and optimization of the logistic cost for all the industry, it is almost 25% more efficient as compared to diesel. So that's the economic advantage. And all this platform is riding on a smart digital platform, which is AI based, where each and every truck is being monitored on a real-time basis for its performance along the route, how driver is behaving, at what speed and which direction he is going, whether he is going to a designated optimized route or not. The performance of engine, how engine is performing, is being monitored online centrally. At the same time, the fuel levels and what next level is required to have the fuel is being monitored on this digital platform. So this whole business has been structured on that, wherein we are trying to provide a carbon reduction to the extent of 30%, SOx, NOx to the extent of 0%,
Efficiency in terms of operational efficiency is as high as 25%, better than the diesel. Similarly, in terms of operating cost, if you look at apart from efficiency on the LNG system, in the electric system, you will have comparatively much lesser maintenance cost. Yes, the initial capital requirement is comparatively higher, but then in the life cycle cost, in terms of better operation, better efficiency, overall, it is going to give much more neater, cleaner, and economical transport system to the heavy industry. As we speak today, almost 600 trucks are running on the road. And from the time we started, we have almost saved 10,000 tons of carbon emission, which is almost equivalent to almost 3.5 lakh tree plantations. That's the way the business is today. And the plan is to go to an operating fleet of 10,000 trucks, and for which the LNG stations are being built, the electric charging stations are being built. There are initial issues and hiccups which are being addressed. As we go along, as the technology improves, the innovation happens around especially around the battery system. Probably it will also provide similar kind of efficient system. As we have in LNG, you need not to worry for 1,000 kilometers for fueling your truck. In electric truck, you have limitations, but I think going forward, those also will be addressed. So this is the area where Green Line is operating today.
Okay, so straight away 25% efficiency in terms of emissions, which you said. So, and from 6,000 to 10,000 within a year, if I can assume, is that?
It's a plan to, no, it's 600 today, not 6,000. It's 600 today, and plan is to go to 10,000 in next 3 years' time. That's the way we are looking at. Yeah.
That's quite ambitious and good to know again. Now, I think the next question is to Mr. Mohan. Let's hear a banker's perspective on kind of promoting ESG aspects across the mobility sector. So, Mr. Mohan, how is the financial sector supporting the transition to green mobility in the India's logistics sector and otherwise as well through its financing options? And maybe you could highlight along the way some of the challenges or some of the opportunities which you see going forward.
Yeah, just before I answer this question, being a last speaker sometimes is disadvantageous. I saw the ticker going up and down, but never mind. So maybe I'm lucky this time. I actually have, my team has worked closely with, your team, and they've gone to your control center. And it was state of the art how you, track most of the matrices which are meaningful, towards the ESG goals. Coming back to your question on how financial sector is supporting the ESG framework in terms of logistics. See, there are two parts to the funding. One is the wholesale funding, which is more on working capital, more on capex, and there are a whole lot of green bonds, SLLs, and private equity money, which is there, to support these initiatives. There's a whole lot of money which is being invested in R&D, and as we speak, the various startups, various companies, the existing OEMs are, investing great amount of money in terms of parallelly, researching on different technologies. In my mind, I think this space will get a little clearer couple of years down the line. There may be a situation where one technology may leapfrog, and that's the risk that we have from a banker's perspective. In terms of retail funding, which is basically to the end customer, we have seen green mobility going up in two-wheelers from almost 1.5% to 5% of the total vehicles. We've seen it moving up in cars. And I think we are in the early stage in commercial vehicles. Probably less than 0.5% of the total commercial vehicles would run on alternate fuel. The good part really is that there is enough emphasis on the both spectrums. When I say both spectrums, what Mr. Tripathi said is on the 50-ton segment, there is a whole lot of LNG and electric vehicle solutions being talked about. And on the other end, which is the last mile, which is the small commercial vehicle, we've seen a lot of electric vehicles, now getting into the market. So I think that's extremely important because it creates a equilibrium. And if you solve the 55-tonner issue, you can always do a 20-tonner. So that addresses the problem that you can actually take care of the entire spectrum of commercial vehicles in some point in time. So there are, the financial institutions have supported cars, EVs movement, and therefore there are enough, financing options which are on table for the retail customer. I would like to take a pause and say what a customer would look at, because in this panel there is no customer. So when I speak to a customer as to why are you not adopting to a LNG or a EV, there are three things which comes to his mind, and he says that is the biggest challenge that we need to solve for. Number one is the range anxiety, and second is the huge capex. Although the total cost of ownership, one can say that in the 6 years, 7 years time, you may be better off. But that's definitely, on his mind. And the third is the charging infrastructure. Today in the panel, I saw, some serious, commitments, planning being done on that front. I have seen some of the, FMCG, Natasha, Soham, saying that they're committed to increase the, overall fleet. I think what is more important really is that how can we look at it from a customer point of view, from a fleet operator point of view, and make things a little better so that the adoption is much faster. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see the time is up in red, so that means it's a warning signal for me. So, okay, just probably just summarizing it. Of course, we heard the industry talking about they have their ambitious targets by 2027 and 2030 in kind of internalizing the entire mobility fleet into grid. We have heard Mr. Tripathi speaking about ambitious goals of 600 to 10,000 vehicles as well as in the 3 years time. And these are large trucks where we have a complete void in the industry. So that's a very, very positive movement. We have heard utilities like BRPL talking about kind of getting into a net zero by 2030, and that would mean charging infrastructure, laying down charging infrastructure along the their license area and as well as other states through a PPP model. So that's also quite positive. And we heard Mr. Mohan also talking about he needs to kind of now relook at going back their own targets of lending it to the EV segment. So that's also all positive note. But one last question from the audience to the entire panelist, if you have. Otherwise, I'll close the panel again with a round of applause to everyone. So one last question, maybe if I can invite anyone. Otherwise, we'll conclude the discussion. Sorry. Okay, so I think that's about it. So I think, right then, so please join me in again thanking and as well as with a round of applause for the esteemed panelists. Thanks for the time.